College PANICS spends $250 million on DEI, and race relations actually collapse on campus. From the New York Times, the University of Michigan doubled down on DEI. What went wrong? A decade and $250 million later, students and faculty are more frustrated than ever because there was no measurement for success of DEI at the university. Anytime you spend money on something or you work on a project, you need a way to measure it to see, okay, is this working? Is this not working? DEI doesn't work in colleges. It doesn't work in universities. It doesn't work in governments or in businesses. But this is the biggest waste of money ever documented on DEI at any college or university. And the New York Times does a great job of taking these guys down. Leaders of the University of Michigan, one of America's most prestigious public universities, like to say that their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is inseparable from the pursuit of academic excellence. Most students must take at least one class addressing racial and ethnic intolerance and resulting inequality. Doctoral students in educational studies must take an equity lab and a racial justice seminar. Computer science students are quizzed on microaggressions. Why would you need to be quizzed on microaggressions if you're studying computer science? Programs across the university are couched in the distinctive jargon that, to DEI's practitioners, reflects proven practices for making classrooms more inclusive, and to its critics reveals how deeply DEI is encoded with left-wing ideologies. Michigan's largest division trains professors in anti-racist pedagogy and dispenses handouts on identifying and addressing characteristics of white supremacy culture, like, quote, worship of the written word. The engineering school promises a, quote, pervasive education around issues of race, ethnicity, unconscious bias, and inclusion. Does engineering have anything to do with any of those things? No, absolutely not. At the Art Museum, captions for an exhibit of American and European art attest to the histories of oppression, quote, even in works that may not appear to have any direct relation to these histories. The English department has adopted a 245-word land acknowledgement describing its core subject as, quote, a language brought by colonizers to North America. Even Michigan's business school, according to its DEI webpage, is committing to fighting, quote, all forms of oppression. A decade ago, Michigan's leaders set in motion an ambitious new DEI plan, aiming to, quote, enact far-reaching foundational change at every level in every unit, striving to touch, quote, every individual on campus, as the school puts it. Michigan has poured roughly $250 million into DEI since 2016, according to an internal presentation. A 2021 report from the Conservative Heritage Foundation examining the growth of DEI programs across higher education found Michigan to have by far the largest DEI bureaucracy of any large public university. Tens of thousands of undergraduates have completed bias training. Thousands of instructors have been trained in inclusive teaching. When Michigan inaugurated what it now calls DEI 1.0, it intentionally placed itself in the vanguard of a revolution then reshaping American higher education. Around the country, college administrators were rapidly expanding DEI, convinced that such programs would help attract and retain a more diverse array of students and faculty. But today that revolution is under withering attack. Energized by backlash to the Black Lives Matter movement and the right-wing campaign against critical race theory in public institutions, at least a dozen states have banned or limited DEI programs at public universities. After the October 7th attacks, as campuses across the country erupted with protests against Israel, critics accused DEI programs of fostering anti-Semitism. In the fever of the 2024 campaign, Republican influencers and politicians have recast DEI as an all-purpose boogeyman, the root cause of defective airplanes, the collapse of a Baltimore bridge, and the near assassination of Donald Trump. But even some of Michigan's peer institutions have soured on aspects of DEI. Last spring, both the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Harvard's Faculty of Arts and Sciences said they would no longer require job candidates to submit diversity statements. Such compelled statements, MIT's president said, impinge on freedom of expression. Michigan hasn't joined the retreat, though. Instead, it has redoubled its efforts, testing the future of an embattled ideal. A year ago, the university inaugurated what it called DEI 2.0. At Michigan's flagship Ann Arbor campus, the number of employees who work in DEI-related offices or have diversity, equity, or inclusion in their job titles increased by 70%, reaching 241, according to figures compiled by Mark Perry, an emeritus professor of finance at the university's Flint campus and a DEI critic. According to a confidential report, a committee appointed by Michigan's provost and stocked with professors with DEI-related appointments urged the school this summer to continue using diversity statements in hiring and promotion, arguing that eliminating them, quote, would be seen as a capitulation to the winds of political expediency. In many respects, Michigan's entire DEI initiative can be understood as a sustained act of defiance against such pressures. Nearly 2 decades ago, voters in Michigan banned racial preferences in university admissions and hiring. When the Supreme Court outlawed affirmative action across the land last year, stripping selective colleges of their most powerful tool for building racially diverse classes, Michigan's president, Santa Ono, went on PBS NewsHour to offer his university as the model for achieving diversity in a post-affirmative action world. DEI at Michigan is rooted in a struggle for racial integration that began more than half a century ago, but many black students today regard the school's expansive program as a well-meaning failure. The university now has a greater proportion of Hispanic, Asian, and first-generation students and a more racially diverse staff. But in a state where 14% of residents are black, the school's black undergraduate enrollment has long hovered stubbornly at around 4%, before ticking up to just 5% this fall. Princess Jane Maria Maboop, the speaker of the university's Black Student Union, told the author that, quote, the students that are most affected by DEI, meaning marginalized communities, are invested in the work, but not in DEI itself. Maboop called Michigan's efforts superficial. For all their spread and reach, she said, the school's DEI programs betrayed, quote, a general discomfort with naming blackness explicitly. Her discontent reflected a tension throughout DEI at Michigan, a pervasive uncertainty about whom and what DEI is really for. Like most schools, Michigan officially celebrates diversity of every kind and inclusion for all. The school's own definition of DEI, which cites 13 distinct kinds of identity, is as sprawling as the university itself. Not one student expressed any particular enthusiasm for Michigan's DEI initiative. While some found it shallow, others found it stifling. They rolled their eyes at the profusion of course offerings that revolve around identity and oppression, and the DEI emails they frequently received but rarely read. Michigan's own data suggests that in striving to become more diverse and equitable, the school has also become less inclusive. In a survey released in late 2022, students and faculty members reported a less positive campus climate than at the program's start, and less of a sense of belonging. Students were less likely to interact with people of a different race or religion, or with different politics, the exact kind of engagement DEI programs in theory are meant to foster. Instead, Michigan's DEI efforts have created a powerful conceptual framework for student and faculty grievances, and formidable bureaucratic mechanisms to pursue them. Everyday campus complaints and academic disagreements professors and students say were now cast as crises of inclusion and harm, each demanding some further administrative intervention or expansion. On a campus consumed with institutional self-criticism, seeming the only thing to avoid a true reckoning was DEI itself. Quote, DEI here is absolutely well-intentioned, extremely thoughtful in its conceptual and design, said Mark Bernstein, a lawyer and Democrat who sits on the university's Board of Regents. Quote, but it's so virtuous that it's escaped accountability in a lot of ways. And if you don't have accountability and you don't have measurement when you're operating any system of any kind at any place, you can never tell if you're on the right track or not, never tell if you're going in the right direction, never tell if you can make a little tweak here or there and get a better result if things aren't going very well. But as most of us realize by now, if DEI was being constantly evaluated, it would be canceled because it doesn't accomplish anything except friction, aggravation, and people being upset. DEI research flourished throughout academia, making the case that schools could harvest the benefits of diversity only if they intervened decisively in campus life and the classroom. DEI programs exploded, moving up through university hierarchies and down into individual divisions and departments. Schools began creating central offices to manage their varied efforts. More and more appointed chief diversity officers. The DEI revolution was part of a much broader transformation unfolding across American higher education. According to a recent study from the Progressive Policy Institute, the ranks of full-time college administrators increased more than twice as fast as student enrollment. Their primary job was to enhance student life and attract more customers. Schools built modern dorms and well-equipped gyms. They expanded career offices and offered wraparound mental health services. Government civil service mandates like Title IX, which prohibits sex-based discrimination, spurred schools to hire yet more lawyers and administrators. The Ann Arbor campus at Michigan grew to have nearly 16,000 non-faculty employees, more than twice the number of full-time faculty members. These growing bureaucracies represented a major and profoundly left-leaning reshuffling of campus power. Administrators were even more politically liberal than faculty members, according to one survey, and far more likely to favor racial preferences in admissions and hiring. They promulgated what has been called an alternative curriculum, taught not in classrooms but in dorms, disciplinary hearings, and orientation programs. Some administrators discovered that student activists could be a potent campus constituency. The former president of one top research institution recalled how students once came to his office with demands, presented in a kind of theatrical performance to enhance the university's DEI program. The former president, who asked for anonymity for fear of risking his present job, later learned that some of the program's senior staff members had worked with and encouraged the students to pressure the administration on their behalf. Quote, "That was the moment at which I understood that there was a whole part of the bureaucracy that I didn't control," he said. By the spring of 2020, Michigan was reaching the final stage of its first 5-year DEI plan. But in the wake of George Floyd's death, as protests erupted around the country and demands to root out racism echoed from campuses to corporate offices, none of the training and programming, the money and new hires and promises seemed to matter. Scrambling to placate the most vocal students and faculty, Michigan unveiled a burst of new initiatives branded as anti-racist. At the law school, which had a long-standing policy of not commenting on events outside the quad, students demanded a public statement about Floyd's death. The Black Law Students Association issued further demands, including mandatory anti-racism training, more mental health counseling, and the hiring of a professor in critical race theory. Over 100 incoming first-year students signed a joint statement to the school that they did not yet technically attend, insisting that it adopted the entirety of the association's demands. The conflicts over inclusion were not limited to petitions and tweets. Increasingly, students and professors were turning to more formal remedies. In 2015, the university office charged with enforcing federal civil rights mandates like Title IX received about 200 complaints of sex or gender-based misconduct on Michigan's campus. By 2020, that number had more than doubled. Last year, it surpassed 500. Complaints involving race, religion, or national origin increased to almost 400 from a few dozen during roughly the same period. The office itself has nearly quadrupled in size in recent years. In a 2022 campus survey, minority students, particularly those who were Black, rated the school's DEI climate worse than other students. Since the start of DEI 1.0, they were less likely to report, quote, feelings of being valued, belonging, personal growth, and thriving. Some evidence suggests that the steady expansion of DEI into campus life is actually constraining student interaction across political and cultural divides. One recent analysis by the political scientist Kevin Walston found that the larger the DEI bureaucracy at a university, the more discomfort students felt expressing their views on social media and in informal conversations with other students. Many conservatives now favor abolishing DEI programs entirely, viewing them as little more than mechanisms to enforce left-wing ideology. Quote, "They're not teaching or research functions," said Jay Green, co-author of the Heritage Foundation study of DEI programs and a former professor at the University of Arkansas. Quote, "They're contrary to academic freedom." Even some liberal scholars believe DEI looms too large. Amna Khalid, a historian at Carleton College in Minnesota, argues that modern DEI is not, as some on the right hold, a triumph of critical theory or post-colonialism, but of the corporatization of higher education in which universities have tried to turn moral and political ideals into a system of formulas and dashboards. Quote, they want a managerial approach to difference, Khalid said. They want no friction, but university inherently means friction. Because you're challenging other people's ideas, whether it's the teacher's ideas or other students. That's how you learn. That's how you test ideas. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.